Warm welcome to everybody. Great to see you. This is obviously the first time we've come together again across the Met East and the Met West region after the summer. Hope you all had some opportunity for some downtime over the summer. If not, maybe you've got it scheduled in. I know summer away this week and over the next few weeks as well. But trust you've been able to find some rest in the midst of it. And it's really great to have Paul Hallam with us this morning as well, all the way from Manchester. So big welcome to you, Paul. Thanks for just making the time, mate. Really appreciate it. I know you're a busy man.
Pleasure.
So
yeah.
Appreciate your time with us this morning. We'll kind of introduce Paul more in a few moments and some of the stuff he's going to talk to us about. Before we do any of that, obviously, overnight and this morning, we've kind of all woken up to some stuff that's coming out from the government and some impending restrictions potentially later on. And I guess like me, you're all asking kind of questions around, is this going to affect us? Is it not going to affect us? What's this going to mean? Well, Dave's got all the answers, thankfully. And so we're going to hand over just to Dave for a few moments. He just wants to, I guess, just touch on that and talk to us a little bit about it before we get into stuff today.
Yeah, I just want to say welcome back. I was feeling after summer, we miss everybody, and I hope you had a break of some sort over August. And I find myself living in two planes at the minute. I find, like, in my bubble with my wife, my children, my grandchildren, it's almost back to normal, to be honest with you. I feel like life's just the same, and that's my little life circle. But then, as soon as you're out in the shop, you have to put a mask on, and you realise COVID is still there. And it's really hard to sort of realise I'm living in both worlds at the same time, and to keep on top of that. And so I just want to encourage you, because it gets tiring. It was novel at first. We were all on top of it because it was something new, but we can quickly forget. And actually, this is going to be one of our most important times when we start churches opening up again. This thing that the government's brought out something saying social gatherings going to be limited to 6 people. I don't think that will affect church attendance, but the government, they will give us clarification. We're already speaking to people at the government to get that. Evangelical Alliance are speaking to them. My experience is that they will tell us probably on the morning of the 14th of September what it means, and then they'll change their mind on the Wednesday. So it won't affect this Sunday. So my main thing is, don't panic, don't worry about it. We'll try and find out more about it. But thank you for your patience with risk assessments. And I have to say, there are some real advantages of being a regional leader. One is you don't have to do risk assessment for your church. Because I've read loads of them. I think, bless you, well done. I just think that's really hard going, and have patience with us. And when I asked Roger and Mike to do them, we were being asked to have them all in by June. And so when I asked her, I thought, yeah, maybe July, August. And they put their lives on hold for a couple of months. So be patient with them. I'm not going to details, but you probably can work out what I'm talking about. Sometimes you can get a bit spiky with people, but they're volunteering that, and they're sort of doing it full time. And so thank you for your patience. Please, I wish we didn't have to do it. I hate bureaucracy personally. It's not my big thing at all, but we still seem to have to do it. So thank you for your patience, and probably thank Roger and Mike for giving me their time and their expertise. And some of you who are helping other churches fill their risk assessments in, thank you very much too. Some of you were saying things like, well, we don't plan to start until September, October, so we're not doing ours yet. That's not how it should work. You should try and do it now, because it might get sent back to you. And so you might say, I want to start next week, and it'll take a month for you to get processed. So you better get on top of it. Is that all right? So anyway, bless you. Lovely seeing you all. Lovely. I'm going to scroll through the pages and look at everybody. And so if you fall asleep, we will all see. We will all see where we go. Mandy was on, well, I should have told you that. But Mandy was on a speed awareness course. And they did it on one of these little things. And she says, one of the guys was he was in his boxer shorts on his bed, on this. So I'm just checking. I'm going to check every window to make sure everyone's dressed appropriately. But, back to you, Carl.
So now everybody's now turning their cameras off.
Don't tell Mandy. Do not. Don't tell Mandy.
That's been recorded.
There is now evidence of that. Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. And so we're going to get Paul now. It's really great to have Paul on. And I know for so many of us over the last, certainly July through August, there's probably been lots of conversations with teams, with leadership teams around what does regathering look like? What does the process look like? And we're probably all a little bit done in terms of thinking about the process and the how-to, and there's been so much advice and different things out there. And where I really just I wanted to bring Paul in was for somebody, for obviously at Lighthouse there, Paul, you've been gathering now for a number of weeks, and you're now running multiple services on a Sunday. And I guess really just wanted to focus in on some of the things that have come out of your gathering, the stories, the kind of some of the moments that have been created. And so I wonder if you could just kind of tell us a little bit about what it's been like for you guys regathering with people, how have the congregation responded over the last number of weeks, what's some of that been like for you guys. So over to you, Paul, and yeah, it'd be great to dive into that.
Good to join with you guys today, to be with you all. And I know that everybody's situation is very, very location specific, so we have to always bear that in mind. So it's not broad brushstrokes is all I can give, but it has been pretty phenomenal. Can everybody hear me all right? Yeah, it has been phenomenal. We've just completed our 8th weekend back to live services. I met with all of our leaders, our pastors of the different church congregations we have now at Lighthouse in Manchester, and we decided to go back as soon as we could. We had a real urgency about us. We felt that the longer we left it to get back, the harder it would be to get our people back. And I still believe that. Some of the things we're hearing from people across the city is some people are not coming back until October. Some people are actually saying, not particularly people who are in the Lighthouse, but in other larger churches in the city, are not coming back at all. They're going to stay online because it's convenient. As somebody once said, at 11 o'clock service, I can be out of bed at 10 to 11, and I can be early for church. So I think that kind of sums up the kind of some of the feelings towards online church being a preference to actual live situation. For our people, though, we were running throughout the lockdown. We were running a mission called Bless Manchester Mission, which is not a food bank. It was what we call a food redistribution mission, and our local rugby team, professional rugby Super League team, got involved in that to help us distribute and collect food donations. And people were coming in during the week to give the items. And so what happened was people came from the church and they saw other people working on the mission, and they just dissolved into tears. And I saw that happen a couple of times. And up until then, I said, we're not going back live because we can't sing. And there's not much point going back live unless we can sing, because singing and worship is such an important part of the church and who we are and how we worship. So that was my take on that, until I'd had this experience of seeing some of our people see one another for the first time in about three and a half months. And when I saw that, I had a real sense of, wow, how important it is for people to fellowship and the community of the church, seeing one another, being in one another's presence. And I think I've made a miscalculation just how important that is. And I think on the strength of that, I shared that with our leaders, and everybody agreed we needed to get back. So when we first did our service, we put what we called our comeback strategy document into head office. That was really welcomed. That took some doing to
think we may have lost Paul.
Still says he's on the call.
Paul, can you still hear me? Still says you.
Yeah, I'm back on there now.
There we go. Perfect.
Can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
So just picking up from that, we had to put our documents in, our risk assessments, like Dave said, all of that, difficult to do. If anybody needs a bit of a help out with that, we possibly could make the document available, but obviously each one's bespoke to your own premises. We're blessed in that we have such a large seating capacity that our first service back, we had, we could put our document in for up to 200 people meeting on a Sunday, safe spacing at 2 meters. The first week back, we had about 100, and I thought everybody would, I thought out of all the people meeting in the lighthouse, I thought, wow, we're going to get, we'll be turning people away. So we put it on Eventbrite, and you had to go through Eventbrite to get a voucher. We put a 20% reduction on the number of places. So we went out to kind of say, right, 180 places are up for grabs. 20 are going to be for walking. That's people who just want to come to the house of the Lord, just want to come to church. Maybe they're new people, maybe the people who've come to faith during lockdown. So we needed to have provision for those. So we were thinking about non-church, non-reach people as well, even in that. So we did all of that stuff, and like 160 people turned up, and I was stunned. I thought it would be absolutely, so that was a surprise. But the meeting together, the three of our congregations went back straight away, all together, and it was amazing. It was amazing. So it was invigorating. It was refreshing, very inspirational, and I think one of the things we have to understand is that there is so much irrational fear out there. Some of it we can understand. Some of it we can run with, and we can cope with it. But some of it is totally irrational. Some people think they're going to get attacked by the Rona the minute they open the front door. And I'm talking Christians. I'm talking about people of faith, you know, who were absolutely petrified. And I think to myself, wow, what will we do when a real massive thing comes along, which I think it will do eventually. I think these are the beginning of sorrows, like we know as Christians. So it was great. It was wonderful to get back in the house, really good. And then we've just built up from then. Our church plant, which is a year old, this coming Sunday, has doubled in size. Actually doubled in size, with 3 or 4 new families joining. Our Eritrean church is slow to come back. I had to do a message for them because a lot of those people obviously are very vulnerable. So all in all, it has been, in answer to that question, what has it been like? It's been phenomenal. It's been great. But as you will appreciate, there's a lot of challenges that we faced with it and are facing now.
Brilliant. Thanks, Paul. I wonder if I can just pick up on something you said there, and actually I'd like to touch on some of the challenges as well that you've faced. But and if anybody's got any questions they want to ask to Paul or David as well, then please use the comments bar, and Sarah's going to be watching that. And so if you've got any questions, please do put them in there, and we'll give some space for that in a moment. Paul, you talked about just obviously that kind of people coming, having fear and all that. One of the things that we've been talking about with our team is actually how do we create an environment that's not fearful, but actually creates an environment that's celebration. How have you guys kind of done some of that as you've regathered people, but also how have your folks responded to that as well? Have they kind of added to that sense of celebration in the room, and what's been some of the journey with that?
Well, I think to give you some real help along the way here, what we have found, and I don't think that this will be something in any way unique to us, I think it'll be seen across the board. Your first people back will be your, how can I say, you're closer. The people who are actually fully involved and engaged in meeting together, who are desperate to get back. I think we have to understand there is a real desperation for people to come back and meet in person. There's a lot of loneliness out there. There's a lot of isolation out there, as we know. So that's great. But what you'll find is everything will be measured. There'll be a measured response from your people. And I think what we realized was that the first couple of weekends back are absolutely essential that you pitch them right. So what I mean by that is that you are seen to be doing things in a correct way, in a way that is absolutely compliant with the government's guidelines, in a way that reflects your not fear, but reflects safety, and get the balance right, not on the fear side, but on the safety side. So the first service back, we didn't wear face coverings because at that particular time it wasn't mandatory. But the second week things changed, and we had to then go to face coverings. And each time when we opened up the services, we explained these things so that people not only in the building and in situ got it, but those people online. Because a lot of our people are watching online to see how we're coping and see what the building looks like, to see if people are safe space, and to see if we are actually complying with the guidelines. So people are testing you out all the time. So you have got to be on it. You really have got to be on it from the get-go. So those are absolutely, in answer to your question there, I mean, with the fear thing. But as leaders, and I said this a while ago when I was teaching on this from Judges 5 with Deborah, and it says leaders that lead in Israel. And we've got to be leaders that lead. And I've been busting a gut in Manchester, getting some of our leaders across the city to get back, because the people need them. We don't want them all coming to us. We're getting people who want to come to our church because their churches are not open. And whilst I could all do that, I'm saying to our own people, get on that Eventbrite as quick as you can, because otherwise somebody will have taken your place. And there were people who couldn't get in this weekend just gone. And I'm saying to lead pastors, will you hurry up and open your churches up? There is no reason to be closed now. That's my opinion. There is no reason. The reasons might be other things. You're building. Somebody hasn't got a building. They're renting a building. The building's not available, etc., etc., etc. So I'll leave that there. I'll park that there, and then you can come back to me if that's okay, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Paul, let's just touch on some of those challenges that you mentioned earlier. And I appreciate there's probably been a whole bunch. So where do you start and where do you stop in terms of talking about the challenges? But I guess what have been some of the kind of key ones, and then how have you and your team, how have you kind of responded to those?
Key challenges are obviously, you're dealing with a climate out there, a climate of fear. You also know that here is a big thing, guys, and we've all got to face this. There is a lot of spiritual inertia out there. There really, really is. Lockdown is going to produce in a lot of people who were not the hottest Christians on the block. It's going to create in them an excuse, basically, to not come along and just stay at home. Let me give you an example. Some of our young adults, we have a very large young adults work here in Manchester at the Lighthouse. And some of our young adults are saying, I'm not coming back to the church at the moment because it's not safe. And then our pastors say to them, but you're in the restaurants every night, you're in the pubs every night, you're socialising with your friends all the time, but you won't. So there is this thing, there is this kind of mental thing going on that we are very, very much going to have to get through that, and we're going to have to face that. So that's one of the main challenges. I think another challenge, quite simply, is what David's alluded to already. The guidelines are changing all the time. As soon as we went back 1 weekend, and the government changed the guidelines on places of worship. That stopped 2 very large churches in Manchester opening up, unfortunately. But like I said to the lead pastor, who's a good friend of mine, there is no reason to cancel. There was no reason to cancel then, so we didn't cancel. We put a massive advert out there saying church is still on. By the way, I've just seen a question coming up. Do you still do online church? Yes, we do. We do online church, and that is really good. That will continue. We're doing it better than ever before. There's more quality in our online. We all through lockdown, we've produced daily devotions every single morning through all of our team, people on the periphery of our team, to give it variety. So it's not just 1 or 2 people speaking. We've not made it a 20-minute boring thing, like, you know, I mean, I go on Facebook and I won't listen to messages longer than 5-10 minutes. And if I'm like that, I'm sure a lot of our people are too. So there's a clue there. So all of our daily devotions, the maximum time is 5 minutes. Some of them are even 2.5 minutes long, so people can just go in there and just get a little bit of a challenge, a little bit of a pep talk in Christ, a little bit of inspiration. So all of that's happening. Our preaching is being spoken about in what we call replay during the week. So all of that's online. So there's more stuff going online all the time. That will not stop. That will keep going. It's really, really, really important that we have the online. The one thing that we do teach, though, it should never, ever be a substitute for the actual physical meeting of people together. And we have a lot of people out there. We've had several people in the church who've had COVID. That's been a challenge. We haven't lost any. That's been great. I did do a funeral a few weeks back, but it wasn't COVID that was the situation there. But I had to do it in a COVID context, and I had to be in the hospital with full PPE gear on, because I knew the family really well, so it was something I needed to do personally. We also have a baptism service coming up at the end of September, because the government have allowed us to go into baptism by full immersion. They've already said that. The local lockdown in Manchester hasn't affected places of worship. Places of worship are still with face coverings at 2 metre distances, even 1 metre with a face covering. Now, we haven't gone into 1 metre, we've kept it at 2, because when you've got 200 people, okay, our building seats 800. But with 200 people, even in that, it feels busy at the end of the service, and we've actually had to discourage any kind of meaningful, long fellowship after the service, because that's under the guidelines as well. But as long as you follow those guidelines, remember, some things are guidelines, not edicts. They're not law. Some things are law and some things are guidelines. You have to be able to know which is which. So all of the time, the challenge is to keep a pace with all the amendments, all the changes, all the nuanced stuff that's coming out. But a lot of our people out there don't really understand even the guidelines when it comes to the places of worship. Why would they? You wouldn't trawl through that every day, would you? Unless you were a leader of a church. So when you have a look at all that stuff, and then people say, well, you can't have more than 30 people, Paul. Right from the get-go, you could have more than 30 people. It all depended on the footprint of your building. And I think a lot of people didn't read into that, and they should have done. They should have kept on reading, and they just stopped at that. Said 30 people, great, you know. But even our new church plant is getting far more than that. This weekend we have a meal in the Irish Heritage Centre. It's not even their own building. It's not our own building, in the north of the city, and we have 100 people booked into that. We can't take any more. We're full, and that's in our church plant that we started last year. So it's been exciting, and it's still challenging. It's still challenging. A lot of people out there with fear. Youth and children, just in a question there from Glenn. Youth and children, the youth ministry is just about to start. We kind of had to wait. There were no guidelines on it before, but we've had to wait until the children went back to school. And so now that that's happened, that's given us basically. So we had a meeting on that on Monday evening. That's going to happen very soon. So creche isn't a problem, because that's down to parental supervision, but the children's ministry really needs to be done. Do we police people during, these are questions coming in from the top, do we police people during, we don't police them, we keep an eye on them, but we're not heavy-handed, and sometimes I'll say to one of the girls who's actually overseeing the programming structure of the service, I'll probably say to them, hey, Faith or Rachel, will you just underline and underscore A, B, or C, something like that. So, yeah, that's easy to do. But you've got to keep your eye on it. Your senior leader's got to keep your eye on that, because that can come and bite us where we don't want bitten if we're not careful.
It's really helpful stuff here, Paul, because I think there are so many of us that are asking all these questions and talking about them with our teams, and it's just really helpful, I think, for your staff. Now been walking this for 8 weeks, and obviously it's been highlighted by all the questions coming in, because they're all very much the questions around, what happens when you gather. So, Billy was asking about how have people responded to not being able to sing. Somebody's then asking, do you allow singing? And then another question is, has your service changed from being predominantly online or only online to now having online and in-person services? How are you doing that? So maybe you pick up on those couple of things for us.
That's a big challenge, because our services before lockdown and our service now is a lot more kind of sensitive to the fact that we have people online. The Sunday that we've just gone now was not just going online, it was going to our partner churches in India. Even though they weren't going to be watching it live, they will be watching it this coming weekend. So when we're addressing people, we're not just addressing an audience in our building, we're addressing audiences in other buildings in another country, and we're addressing obviously an online audience. So we have to be aware of that. We have to be sensitive to that. And I think when you are in your language, if you are conscious in your language that you're not just speaking to the people that you're seeing, I think that can be so attractive to people and accommodating to people who feel a part of what you're saying and what you're doing. So that's important, that online kind of attitude that you have, that online demeanor to all your worship leaders, your team, and your preachers and everything. That's really, really important. Yes. And what was the other thing you mentioned there, Carl? Just remind me again.
No, I think you've answered both of them, really.
Okay.
The other question, a couple of
the singing.
Oh, the singing, that was it. Sorry, yeah, but you did.
There was great disappointment that we couldn't sing, and for me it was a decision maker at first. I'm not going to go back because we can't sing. What's the point? So I was holding back. So I was saying to our team, I don't think there's any point going back. We can't sing, blah blah blah, and all of that. But it was when I said I had that moment where I saw our people meeting one another for the first time for 3.5 months, and really tearing up over that. It made me really, really just change my mind, change my heart on that one. And I said, I'm not going back for me necessarily. I'm going back for the people. This has got to be about the people. About what do the people need? What do people in Christ need? And at the end of the day, we're just under shepherds, aren't we? Right? So what do the people need? What is good for the people? What's healthy for the people? That's what we're going to do. We're going to be driven by healthy church, not wealthy church. And so that's what we did. Now, not singing, it's a frustration. Don't get me wrong. Even now, it's a frustration. And at first, when people didn't wear face coverings, we could see people just singing, and we just had to look at them and just say, and then some people started miming, and then some people were doing a bit more miming than a bit more than miming, and more singing than miming, in actual fact. But once the face coverings have come, of course, we don't know who's singing and who's not, quietly. But it hasn't been a dampener that I thought it would have been, because people just, there's something about, isn't there all, guys? Listen, we're all on the same page here. Haven't we recognised that there's something really special not only in being in the presence of the Lord, but being in the presence of the Lord with the presence of his people, being there as a family and as a community. It's powerful. It's powerful. Nothing could substitute that, by the way. So the singing has been, but it's amazing how much clapping, spontaneous clapping and applause has happened. Question came up there is has the length of our service changed because of being online as well? At first, yes. I'm afraid the last couple of Sundays, and I was the main culprit in it with my preaching, it went on a bit longer because of the message going to several congregations. And I was actually preaching on the second coming, and quite a good number of people gave their lives to Christ in the physical location. And I felt that was important to be clear and that was more important. Length of service is an issue. I don't think, we would try and keep to 1.5 hours. That's the length of service. We even had an hour and 10, an hour and quarter when we first came back, and that's the ideal. I think we try to keep at, but it was a bit longer this weekend because of the preaching and because of our choir, who did a virtual thing we'll have like an all nations choir. So in answer to your question, they're not totally dissimilar in time, and that's probably why we don't get a massive online viewership like we did at first. We're getting thousands at first looking at our services, but I think we all agree the viewing figures are quite a misnomer anyway. People are popping in and popping out and logging on and locking off, and some people are just, what we have noticed is a lot of people don't log on to listen to your worship. They probably log on more to listen to the word being preached. That's what we found.
Yeah, brilliant. Paul, I'm going to just ask you one more question that's come up that I think might be helpful to a few. And then what we would love to do after that is to get everybody into some breakout rooms, just sort of 3 or 4 of you together, and just be a great opportunity just to connect with one another, perhaps say hello to each other and introduce if you don't know the other person. But really, I think just to spend a few moments praying for one another, because I think there's nobody more uniquely that understands our position than one another. We understand we're all asking similar questions and processing this together, and so we'd love to just get everybody in breakout rooms for around 15 minutes to just do that with one another. Before we go, Paul, so a couple of people have asked, what are the elements that make up your service? So you've sort of said that an hour and 15, so 75 minutes is the ideal. If you were planning that and working with your team, what would be some of the elements that would make up the service for you?
Well, I think obviously the elements, there's got to be meaningful, relevant, pertinent worship, and it has to be. I think if you're going online, it needs to be quality, as best as you can get it. I think that's important to invest in that. We invested heavily. Funnily enough, before we knew about lockdown, we invested heavily in our online. All of our equipment to be able to do it. Our cameras, we've replaced our cameras, we replaced all of our recording gear and everything. It was almost like the Lord had tipped us off. We didn't know what was coming, but we'd acted beforehand in January and upgraded everything. So when we went into lockdown, we just about made it. So worship is really important. I think your communication is very important through the pandemic. I don't think people want to tune into people who are not clear about where they're headed, and speak into what is needed in the pandemic. I think there is a lot of fear out there, and I think we need to be broadcasters of hope and broadcasters of faith in an era where most people are broadcasting fear. I think that's a massive one for us. Broadcast hope, broadcast positivity, broadcast light. That's what we need to do. God gave me a word in September last year, and the whole of the church got behind this. And it was in the Acts of the Apostles where it says they published the word. And we invested heavily in publishing the word, whatever that meant, publishing the word, getting the word of God out there. And we're seeing rich rewards from that now incredible rewards in terms of people coming to Christ, in terms of new families coming, in terms of even finance coming and resources. And I do believe we really logged on to something special with that, publishing the word. The word was spread around the whole region. We've got to do that. We've got to be broadcasters of faith. And broadcast, I don't mean that in faith preaching like some people think it means, but broadcasters of hope and positivity. I don't think there's, and we all believe this, there's no greater, more positive message than Jesus Christ today. And I just think more people love to hear that than we actually think. So the preaching, the communication through the pandemic, what we're doing as a church, we just announced we're opening a new service, so we're going to a fourth service on the 20th. We've also said to our people online, and we've said to our people in the house that we will do as many congregations as it takes to get all of our people back safe, even if that means having 8 congregations on a Sunday in our building to get everybody back. We've got certainly over 1,000 people here in Manchester. We don't just want them all back. We want a lockdown harvest as well. So we're going to be greedy on that. So I don't care how many services we have. We will lead as many services as it takes. If that takes us then doing an hour service, an hour long, then we'll have to just walk through with that and run with it.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul, and just so much wisdom in what you've shared there. And I hope and pray it's just been helpful to everyone. And I think, just as an encouragement to everyone on, really, let's keep talking about this stuff. Let's keep sharing our experiences, and those that we're in close relationship with, let's just use those to encourage one another through this, because we are all journeying very similar. While context will be different based on location, churches, all these things will affect us, and we're all talking them through. So we're going to give a little bit of an opportunity for that right now by opening up some breakout rooms. And so Sarah's just going to get those ready, and going to get 3 or 4 of you in a room, and just spend the next 10, 15 minutes just chatting together, encouraging one another, and make sure you pray for one another as well. And then we'll come back together about 11 o'clock and just say our farewell.